All right, today we're going to be talking about math properties. You may have had some exposure to this in elementary school, but we are going to get a little more in depth here. We're learning about 6 properties today: the commutative, the associative, the identity, the inverse, the property of zero, which sometimes is just called the zero property, and the distributive property. So for the commutative property, the main idea for that one is to think about what the word commute means. Commute, like if your parents commute to work, means to move. So whenever we're changing the order, moving the terms around, that is the commutative property. So this is when order does not matter. This works for addition and multiplication, which makes sense because we know that you can multiply or divide in any order and not change the value. So here are some examples. We have 5 plus 3 plus 2. That's the same as 2 plus 5 plus 3. They both equal 10, right? You can add in any order. So if we change the order in addition or change the order in multiplication, it does not change the value. One thing to point out here is that properties are always true. So if you ever see an example where the left side does not equal the right side, it does not represent a property. A property has to be true. Let's do an example with multiplication. 2 times 4 times 2, well, I should use a different number, times 3 is the same as 4 times 3 times 2. On the left, that'll give me 8 times 3. On the right, that'll give me 12 times 2. They're both 24. And by the way, you don't have to only use numbers. These properties also work for variables. If you add a plus b plus c, that equals b plus c plus a. So you might see it represented with variables instead of numbers, but just know that when you add or subtract, you can change the order, and it doesn't change the value. For the associative property, we're going to think about what the word associate means. You associate with your friends. It's like a group of people. So you're going to see parentheses when talking about the associative property. That doesn't automatically mean that if it has parentheses, it's associative property, but if the groups change or what's inside the parentheses changes, then it's the associative property. Again, this only works for multiplication and division. Let's see an example. Following the order of operations, if I did like 5 plus, we'll just use those same numbers from above. If I did this and I added 5 plus 2 first, 3 plus 2 first to get 5 and then added 5, that would be 10, right? And it would be the same thing as if I added 5 plus 3 first to get 8 and then added 2. So in this case, the order did not change, but the groups did. When the order stays the same, but the groups change, it's associative property. The same goes for multiplication. If I do 2 times 4 first to get 8 and then multiply it by 3, that's the same thing as if I were to do 4 times 3 first to get 12 and then multiply it by 2 to get 24. I have not changed the order of my numbers, only the groups. And again, it works also for variables. Like you could have a, b, c, that means multiplying a times b times c, and then c, b, a, and you'd get the same answer. Oh, wait, no, I just did commutative, didn't I? Let's put some groups in there. Here we go. That is the same as if you were to multiply a times b first and then times c. All right, the identity property is what you can do to keep a number the same. It stays the same. That makes sense when you think about the word identity. You always stay who you are, no matter what you change about like your appearance. If you were to dye your hair purple, you're still the same person. So we're going to see what happens in addition to keep a number the same. You can add 0, or you can multiply by 1 and not change a number, right? 5 plus 0, oh my goodness. 5 plus 0 equals 0. 5 times, oh my goodness. Let me say that one more time. I'm not starting my video over. 5 plus 0 equals 5, and 5 times 1 equals 5. So those are ways that you can add something or multiply something and not change a number's value. The inverse property is to do the opposite, to cancel a value. For example, if I had a -7, what could I add to it to get 0? I could add its opposite, which is 7, to get 0. And so that's important for equations coming up, because we're going to want to move some numbers away from a variable. So adding the opposite, again, this property only works for addition and multiplication. Adding the opposite will get a number away from a variable. With to multiply by something and get rid of it, let's say I had, let's do a fraction like 2/3. If I wanted to get a 1, this is how we cancel values in algebra when we do equations. We're going to multiply by its reciprocal. That's how you can get a fraction to be 1. There's other examples too. You could do like 3 divided by 3 to get 1. And so on. This is kind of this one's not even in our book. It sort of came with these notes, but it is an important property for when we get to equations, which is coming up real quick. All right, the multiplication property of 0 means, you guys know this one, I bet you could even guess it, that multiplying by 0 always equals 0. So 3 times 0 is 0, x times 0 is 0, any number times 0 is 0. And lastly, you may have talked about the distributive property in the past, maybe in elementary school, maybe not, but it means you're going to multiply a value to an expression that's inside parentheses. So it'll look like this. 3 times 4 plus 1. We know that we could use the order of operations and do 4 plus 1 first and then multiply by 3. But you can also take that 3 and multiply it by each thing in parentheses. 3 times 4 and 3 times 1 and add them. It also works for an expression that has variables in it. Let's say you had x plus 8 in parentheses instead of numbers only. You could still do 3 times x is 3x and 3 times 8 is 24. And the distributive property is something that you'll dive more into as you go farther along in math, but that's just a basic idea of what it is. The word distribute means to give one to each. Like when I passed out your notes, I distributed the notes. I gave one to each of you. So you're like multiplying this 3 times each thing in parentheses. You're multiplying it by each. You're distributing it among the terms in the parentheses. Okay guys, thanks for watching.